All right, welcome back. The U.S. has struck 2 more boats accused of illegal narcotics smuggling over the weekend. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth shared this dramatic video. He posted it on social media, saying the boats were operated by designated terrorist organizations in the Eastern Pacific. 6 people were killed. Now, this marks the 18th strike by the U.S. military on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean and Pacific since September. And in total, at least 76 people have been killed. Retired Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster joins us now. He's a former national security advisor to President Donald Trump during his first term, and viewers of this network should know H.R. McMaster well. Good morning, General. Good to have you with us. You know, the White House continues to carry out these strikes without congressional approval, without sharing with the public their reasoning or their evidence that these were drug smuggling boats. So what justification is there for this?
Hey, Errol, it's great to be with you. Well, first of all, they have designated, the Trump administration has designated these organizations narco-terrorist organizations. And the argument is that these organizations harm the American people with the narcotics that they traffic. So the main argument has been one of defending the American people. But of course, as you mentioned, there hasn't been a lot of transparency about that legal argument. And of course, really what the American people need to do when they see, making these decisions to take human life is to understand the legal justification, but also, hear from the president and others the ethical argument. And that ethical argument, it goes back to really the writings of St. Thomas Aquinas. It has to do with just cause. Is this a just cause? Does the defense of the American people warrant this kind of action? The second is it a right authority? That's also a criterion for jus ad bellum theory. And does this fall within the president's Article 2 authorities under the Constitution? Because the American people, through the representatives in Congress, should have a say in questions of really war and peace and so forth. And then there's also the issue of jus in bello theory from Thomas Aquinas about proportionality and discrimination. And so I think what is really called for is more than these kind of sensational images that you're showing, is to have more transparency, not just on that, but on the legal and ethical argument to make to the American people.
Right. The point you make about ethics, I think, is an important one, because even in the footage that we were just sharing, it's dramatic footage as you're watching people be killed. The administration quick to declassify and share that, but yet not declassifying and sharing whatever evidence they have that justifies this. And in addition, President Trump has said he's threatened, in fact, to expand military action in Nigeria. This is Africa's most populous nation, of what he says is the government allowing Islamic terrorists, in his words, to, quote, kill our cherished Christians. I mean, it's both Muslims and Christians who are a victim of Islamists in Nigeria. So what is the president's authority there, and what kind of message does this send?
Well, he's right to call out, the brutality of these 2, heinous jihadist terrorist organizations in northeastern Nigeria. This is Boko Haram and the Islamic State. And as you point out, they're a scourge to Christians. I mean, they'll murder Christians right away. But also, these are takfirin, which is a good term to use for these jihadist terrorists, because takfir means that they declare somebody outside of Islam, even if they're a Muslim. And then they inflict so much brutality and murder and rape and suffering on the Muslim population as well. These are really the enemies of all humanity. And it's important, I think, to point out that Nigeria has to do more about this. But you have to also recognize Nigeria is in a really difficult situation. In that same part of Nigeria, in large measure because of the violence, there are about 37 million people who are food insecure. There's a crisis going on there. Nigerians also have a problem in the southeast part of the country with a separatist organization. So they're stretched. But I think what you're seeing is an argument for the kind of U.S. and really allied engagement in the continent of Africa, in the area of security, but also in the area of economic development. That's not that we're going to solve Nigeria's problems for them, but actually these situations get a lot worse when the U.S. and others disengage. Hey, Errol, just look at the Sahel, in Mali and Burkina Faso and Niger. where these other jihadist terrorist groups associated with the Islamic State are gaining control of vast parts of territory and resources and populations. And you know what? That's when they become really dangerous.
Right.
Remember when ISIS took over parts of Syria and Iraq, and they conducted 95, to 100 attacks outside of that area, including all through, France and Belgium, and they shot down a Russian airliner. They inspired an attack in San Bernardino. So, and I know, people think, that they like this term maybe sometimes, hey, let's just end the endless wars. But hey, you know what? These wars don't end when the U.S. disengages. And again, not that we should be doing the fighting, but that we can provide some of the assistance necessary to prevent these groups from gaining control of territory.
Such an important point. When there's economic stability in places, populations are much less likely to be susceptible to what these extremist organizations are offering. General H.R. McMaster, always insightful to speak with you, and we want you to enjoy Veterans Day tomorrow. We always appreciate you and the service of other servicemen and women. H.R. McMaster, General, thank you.
Thanks, Earl.